Okay, joining me today, I have Colonel Douglas McGregor. Colonel McGregor, thank you so much for coming on again.
Sure.
French President Emmanuel Macron says that sending NATO troops, boots on the ground, is not something that should be removed from the table. We must do everything we can to stop Vladimir Putin. So this is a top G7 leader saying he's considering sending military troops on the ground into Ukraine. Would this be France leading the way and going first? Would he try to convince all NATO nations to send a coalition? Or is this Macron trying to sound tough on TV?
I would characterize him as an unserious player in all of this. First of all, you've got to understand that he's got nothing to send. The French army is a very light force designed for employment in North Africa. As a friend of mine who's retired from the French army likes to say, the French army is designed for safari in Africa. The British army is even smaller, less capable, and could probably go to Belize and provide emergency relief or put down riots in Belfast, and that's about it. Europe has no forces to speak of. The one single powerful, potent force that Europe had was the German army. And the German army has been almost completely dismantled. It'll take years to recover from the damage done to it over the last 20, 25 years. And then finally, that leaves us. We just cut 24,000 spaces out of the regular army because we couldn't recruit. So we've just cut them. They're now talking as they have in the past. The generals do this repeatedly over time. They never change the force. They never alter it. They never adapt it. They never reorganize fundamentally. What they do is they strip it out. So instead of having 3 battalions in an organization, you go to 2, or instead of 4 companies inside of an organization, you go to 3. In other words, they hollow out the force. To be blunt, NATO is holding a very weak hand and is bluffing. And we're a big part of that because we talk a great game, but we don't have anything to send. That's what you call in poker a dead man's hand. The Russians have a very strong hand. They are not bluffing, and they have not threatened. But what they have done is make very clear that if we attack them, if NATO attacks Russia in any way, shape, or form, then NATO will be at war with Russia. Now, very recently, within the last 24 hours, there are reports coming out that more mobile, long-range ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads have been moved further west, north and west of Belarus, and also to other areas closer to the west. So I think everything has been done that could possibly be done by Moscow to signal they're quite serious. We have never been serious. If we were serious, we wouldn't need a proxy war, would we? We're not serious. So we built our military capability on the backs of the Ukrainian people. That's over. Ukraine is destroyed as a nation. You have this illegitimate, corrupt, and criminal organization in Kiev that calls itself the Ukrainian government. They won't last. Whether they'll be removed by their own or end up being pushed out by the Russians, I don't know. But they're done. And all that is left to be done now from the Russian side is to retake Kharkov, which they will, and then they'll retake control of Odessa, which are historically Russian cities. There is another fly in the ointment at the moment, and that is that Moldova has a government which chose to join NATO without the consent of the governed in Moldova. And now the Transnistrian Republic, which contains 220,000 Russian citizens in the lower southeastern corner of Moldova, it's the Republic of Transnistria, they have asked Russians for assistance because they are living under a blockade right now at Brussels and Washington's assistance. Moldova is trying to essentially make life miserable for the 220,000 Russians that live there. So I imagine when they finally take Odessa, there will be a predisposition to simply march a little further west and north and incorporate Transnistria into what is historically southern Russia down there. Remember the area like where Odessa is, for instance, and all along the Black Sea was until the 1770s Turkish, Tartar, and Mongol. People don't seem to understand that. Ukraine never touched the Black Sea. Ukraine is much further north. So what you have is areas that were formerly Ottoman. Before they were Ottoman, they were Mongolian, Tartar, the Crimean Khanate. Those areas will now become part of Russia too, and you'll end up with the landlocked Ukraine, which is what Ukraine historically was. I think that's where we're headed, unless somebody stands up with some common sense and decides to talk intelligently to the Russians. But lying to everybody and saying that Ukraine can snatch inglorious defeat or a great victory from inglorious defeat is nonsense. There's no chance for that to happen at all.
Yeah. Chuck Schumer said if we just get them that $60 billion, they'll win. It's such naive thinking. I mean, I'm beyond disappointed in members of the Senate, but to say just giving them the money will make them win is ludicrous.
Well, it's not disappointing. It's the voice of corruption and deceit. These people are liars. The last thing they want to do is stand up and admit to what they've done. They've destroyed Ukraine. He could care less what happens to the Ukrainian people. His friend Zelensky is what he's concerned about, and the interests that Larry Fink and BlackRock and other major corporations with agricultural interests have in Ukraine. That's what concerns him, because right now Zelensky is willing to essentially hold a fire sale and sell off whatever is left of Ukraine to those capitalists in the West that are associated with Senator Schumer and his friends. This is gangsterism. This is not any form of diplomacy or national military strategy that makes sense. And remember, you had Victoria Nuland recently on the talk show circuit telling everybody, well, look, if we give more money to Ukraine, you have to understand most of that money stays here because it buys weapons and technology and capabilities. So this keeps factories humming. And in the meantime, all of that, eventually will get to Ukraine, but not for some period of time. But most of the cash, importantly, is recycled. In other words, it stays in the United States, and large portions of it go to the shareholders in the industries and to some to constituents to pay them for their work. And a lot of it will be recycled into political action committees that keep people like Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer in power. And by the way, the drug cartels, I'm sure, would be very grateful because they're already walking around Mexico with Javelin missile systems on their backs. I'm sure they've got lots of other things, thanks to the arms bazaars in places like Kosovo and elsewhere in the Balkans and the Middle East, where these weapons are being recycled and resold for profit, thanks to